Hi, welcome to Bright Hope Creations. I'm Kara, and today we're starting a new series, Color a Critter with Copics and Kara. So this is our little raccoon George from Purple Onion Designs. I already created the background for him, and he is waving, but we're going to have him hanging off that balcony. Now that balcony is separate, so I stamped that over the background stamp, which is that room with a view. I stamped it twice, just took off the roof on the lower one. So it looks like it's high up there and he's going to be hanging off that balcony there, because the sentiment I have for that is hang in there. All right, well, let's start with our raccoon. You saw I started with the W00, but decided that wasn't even worth it. So with the W1, kind of figuring out where I want shadows, and when I felt I was happy with that, I'm now coming in with the W2 to reinforce where those are. Now this little guy is going to have a combination of warm grays and cool grays, and so you'll see me switch between W's and C's throughout. But I'm just getting an idea of how I want to layer up these colors so that he looks like he has both light and dark pieces in his fur. When I look at a raccoon, if I Google a picture of a raccoon, there are a lot of warm and cool grays, whites, browns, all mixed together in quite a variety to create that texture. And although he's a cartoon character, I still wanted to mimic that look. So the way I've decided to tackle that is to use kind of a dot method. So you can see I'm just using a lot of dotting motions with the Copic markers to create that texture. And with Copic markers, you cannot put a light one over a dark one and think you're going to see that light color because they're translucent. They're not opaque, unlike a colored pencil where you can add that light colored pencil over the top and see that light color. So it's a little tricky, but it's very doable with Copics with a little practice and guts. Because coming in here with that C6, I was like, ugh, it looks terrible. And it's gonna look terrible for a little while because I'm just getting that texture onto the raccoon. All right, coming in and filling in those eyes, the mask part of his eyes, and finding shadows and making sure that those are prominent, just touching those areas pretty much, coloring in the inside of the ear. And now with that C8, which is as dark as I go, and then I'll blend that in with the C6. So I do own all of the W's and C markers. The neutral ones, I have every other one. I didn't invest in all of those, and I know there's another one, the toner markers. I don't have those. I really find that I grab my C's and W's because they are very different than each other and they seem to work for me, but the neutrals are nice as well. All right, blending that C8 in with the C6, and now here's where I'm starting to blend, sort of blend with this dot texture up the raccoon's forehead area and then in his tail, and making sure that there's the dark texture represented, but not too much. I really, I'm going to be conservative for a while until I feel more comfortable about how it's going. I can always add in more, but I can't take any out. So dropping down now in the intensity. This is a W4, but it really isn't blending with that C6. So I'm going to move it back up to a W6 just to get that blended and making sure that I have that cool to warm variety within the texture. I'm using the same technique in the body that I am on the head. There's just so much less to see there, but I'm going to keep his belly white, and so that's mainly going to be cool grays. So here is that W6, and it's kind of bringing those in with the C6s, and I feel like I have a better flow of that dark to light look. The shadows that we put on animals to make them look rounded, it's just a little different on this guy because there's so much texture, and so it's a lot of dots, but here's where it all comes together. So I'm using a lighter color and I'm blending now, really blending, not dot blending, over all of what I already have here, and that tones the dots down and kind of blends them more like they're part of the fur rather than on top of the fur. And I'm not done with that, but now I'm beginning to shade in with the belly and top of the mouth there. Oops. All of my Copics are a little drippy. I've been keeping caps off both sides so they don't drip, but I forgot that one. So he's got a little drip on his face, but that's not a big deal. I recently went through and filled markers, so now I'm paying the price on the other side, so they're a little too full. All right, like I said, I wasn't done with the top of his head. He needed to connect the light at the very top to the darker eyebrow, I'll call it eyebrow section there. And so that's what I'm doing, just bridging the gap with the medium intensity Copic markers. So this is a C3, and I'm also shading a bit with that belly and making sure that it looks rounded. And at the bottom of his face there, where it's mostly white, now I can blend that in with the C1. And you see, again, I skip colors because it's a small area. I don't feel like I have to get that C2 in there between the C3 and the C1. I tend to lose the high impact of dark to light when I start blending with all of the shades. Here again, I skipped the C0 and went straight to the C00. And once I'm done blending with the C00, I'm feeling pretty good about the texture and how well it's defined between dark and light, but I'm coming in with a colored pencil. This is a Prismacolor white pencil, trying to just give a little texture. As I mentioned in the beginning, the colored pencil is opaque, so it sits right on top of the Copic color. But then as I'm looking at this, I feel like maybe it got him too white up at the top. Well, always live and learn. That's kind of how I roll. With a Signo white gel pen, I'm putting a little reflection into his eyes because he's got dark eyes and they reflect the light. Trying to use my Signo to add a little bit more texture to the white, but I think this pen is pretty done. It's just kind of dried up, as Signo pens tend to do. I'm cutting him out, and I'm speeding this way up. I do not cut this fast, but just wanted to put it in there that I'm turning him around in order to cut. It just makes it a lot easier. And then where there's a little area like that, I just cut right into the image on a line to get down to where I need to cut through, and making sure that everything's trimmed well. I'll use a light Copic marker to just make sure that my edges aren't stark white. And then I like to come along the sides of the image with a brush marker to make sure that the edges are black like they were stamped. So I'm using a Prismacolor brush tip marker for that. And where the stamp lines aren't solid, like with whiskers and such, I make sure that I just dot on those areas too where it's black, and otherwise it looks unnatural. All right, well now we have to figure out how to hang him on the balcony. How he got there, I don't know. But his paw needs to be holding onto one of the rails, and then the rest of him is sort of hanging. So one side of his body I'm lifting up with foam tape, and the other side I'm adhering flat onto the panel so that he has his little paw there. And it looks like he's got it hooked around one of those. Well, it doesn't look like he has it hooked around one of the. We'll fix that, don't worry. That's coming. Stay tuned. But meanwhile, we're going to put the sentiment on there, the hang in there that was heat embossed in white. And now we can get him to hang on one of those rails. And I'm using a Copic multi-liner. This happens to be a 0.1 because it kind of matched along with the thickness of those stamp lines. And that way he's got a rail in front of his paw, and it looks like he's hanging on to the railing there. Die cut the panel with a stitched rectangle just to kind of finish that off, and I'm adhering it onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 note card, and our card is all done. I hope you enjoyed this new series today, this first episode, the pilot? No, the launch. Well, I hope you enjoyed the new series, Coloring a Critter with Copics and Kara. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.